Tech News Weekly is sponsored by Hover.com. Go to gfu.hover.com and get 10% off your entire purchase. FreshBooks. FreshBooks is an easy-to-use online invoicing service that saves you time, gets you paid faster, and makes you look professional. Get started completely for free at FreshBooks.com. And by Audible.com. Get a free audiobook by going to audiblepodcast.com/GFQ.
Starting Tech News Weekly in 3, 2, 1.
Welcome everybody to Tech News Weekly on this very cold Friday here in New York City. I'm Andrew Zarian. I'm joined by Eric Lanigan, as I am each and every other week. How you doing, Eric?
Hey, Andrew.
I was going to say each and every week, but it's every other week.
Each and every other week, exactly.
Each and every other week. And I'm joined by Suncast, which he's here each and every week. How you doing, Suncast?
I'm doing pretty good. Not so, it's a little cold here, but I think New York's a little bit colder.
Yeah, considering the other day it was like 60 degrees here and now it's freezing. I don't know. Well, the groundhog, did he see a shadow or he didn't?
Well, they said that he did.
I don't know. Stupid groundhog.
I heard the groundhog saw his shadow and then turned to the viewing crowd and said, "Why do you people care about this?"
Yeah, what is wrong with you people? We just discovered a planet that could potentially be, the most specific Earth-like planet that we've discovered, but we're still relying on a groundhog. We're relying on a groundhog.
Every 2 months they say that.
The groundhog is going to tell us when our seasons are going to change. I love this. And they make such a big deal out of it here. Oh, my God, the groundhog saw a shadow. Did you hear?
But the groundhog is one with the Earth.
Yeah, I guess so. It's a giant squirrel. Do you know that? A groundhog is a squirrel. It's a type of squirrel. Yeah. I read
Is
that.
Is it related to a beaver?
No.
I picture the same thing.
I do too, but it's actually related to the squirrel family, and I learned that from Reddit.
Huh.
Yeah. Thank you, Reddit, for that. Yeah. So to start off the show, I do want to go into the story, and we were discussing it off the air. Eric said he doesn't really get the story, and he thinks it's a non-event. So he actually wanted us to start off with this to see where the discussion goes and why this is a big story. Sony has replaced its CEO, Howard Stringer. Now, this, to many people, who cares? It's another CEO being replaced. It seems like it's a common thing now where everybody's replacing their CEOs. But the reason why this is a big thing, and it's multiple reasons. One, it was a really big deal when this guy became CEO because he was, I believe he was the first non-Japanese CEO for Sony. And it was a big deal. He's a British guy, and he became CEO. And they made it a big deal. But the other reason why this is a big deal is because this is Sony's startup again. This is the way Sony's going to try to get aggressive, and they're shaking things up. We've seen them change. I think they're putting out a couple of MP3 players that are running Android now. They failed in every market possible, except for the PlayStation market, which they are not doing so great. They sold, I believe it's like 61 million units, but they are still labeled a non-competitor in sorts because of the lack of expansion over the last couple of years with the PlayStation. The PlayStation was supposed to be, I think they said they had a 10-year plan. It was supposed to be extremely powerful, and they really didn't do much.
No, not a 10-year plan.
I know, these 10-year plans, Suncast. Maybe they're in the same boat as RIM. But to me, this seems like this is Sony shaking things up after having a awful, awful year. Eric, I want to go to you first on this. Based on what I said, what do you think of it now?
Well, I don't know. I guess the point is, I guess what I see when I read this is this guy going to help Sony at all, or are there problems, much larger than any one person can shake up? Is this sort of a systemic problem? They're in so many different places. They compete with each other. They still want to try to make the top formats of the world instead of just, they're doing the Blu-ray thing over again. And as you said, the PlayStation 3 outages, and as this article says, and they've had, this guy alone has had problems too with this PlayStation division. So what are your thoughts?
I mean, and I want to go to Suncast right after this, but to me, Sony has from the 1980s to now, over the last 25 years, Sony has really fallen from where it used to be. I mean, they were number one TV manufacturer. Everybody wanted a Sony, and I don't know anybody that has a Sony anymore.
Right.
I mean, Samsung is kind of taking that market, and Vizio, the cheaper of the TV manufacturers, have taken the market, and they're putting out great units. The PlayStation is not the number one console in the world. It's actually the Xbox 360. I don't know people buying any Sony portable music players.
I totally agree with you there. Sony used to be the best in TVs. They used to be the best in audio video. They used to be the best in Walkmans. And there is no category anymore where Sony is the best at anything.
I worked for a Japanese company that they had an office here in New York, and the CEO's brother was VP of I think like Walkman development. Like I forgot his exact title, but he was part of that division that created the MP3 players. And this was about 3 years ago. And for Christmas, they gave every employer's kid like a little Walkman player, like a little MP3 player. I think they were still calling it the Walkman at that time. Every kid, the guy was telling me, every kid that was at that party wanted an iPhone. They wanted the iPod, I should say. They were all surprised at this thing. And this is even, this is in Japan. This is in their market. Nobody wanted the thing. And all the kids were upset that they didn't get an iPod. So that's a big problem for Sony. And I think that explains all their issues in one lump sum. Suncast, what do you think?
This is a similar story that we've heard from other companies, though, I think. They've had their fair share of issues over the past few years.
Yeah.
I think they've struggled in regards to coming up with digital media players. But then again, so have other companies.
Everybody.
If you look what Apple has done with the iPhone, the iPod Touch, it's very hard to compete with either of those devices. So any company that's trying to come out with a touchscreen smartphone has to compete with the iPhone. Anybody that comes up with some sort of MP3 or music player digitally, they have to compete with the iPod Touch and similar devices like that. And when you have a company like Apple, they've kind of ruined it for everybody else. There's just no way to compete with them. So in that regards, I kind of give them a pass because it's just so difficult to compete against Apple.
Yeah, Apple has certainly become the Sony of every industry that Sony used to be the Sony of.
But why do you think
isn't
that
it
is?
ironic that people used to say in about 1997 or so, in the mid to late 90s, would Sony and should Sony buy Apple? And now people are saying, should Apple buy Sony?
Yeah, that's funny. I remember hearing that a lot. Now, and it's not. Why the lack of innovation? Again, by someone like Sony. Is it the comfort zone that these companies fall under? Do you feel that they get too comfortable at number one or number two and they start saying, you know what, we're going to hang out like this 10-year plan? RIM had the 10-year plan, and they're
suffering the same fate, partly because of poor decisions. I don't know if they're in the same boat as RIM is. I think RIM is far off worse shape than Sony is. But you also have to think that, I'm trying to think of the point that I was going to make. The fact is that they're just not in the same boat because they have a bigger market share. They have more products out there. The problem is that some of the stuff that we're doing just never really panned out. Like all the Sony Walkman stuff they did, it just never really panned out. The Sony PlayStation 3, they've suffered a lot of issues with. And one of my worries is that, this new guy, what's his name? It's Kazu Harai or something like that. I'm sorry if I'm saying the guy's name wrong. It's not one of those things that's very obvious to pronounce. But this is the guy that actually headed up and led the gaming division of Sony. So, and we've seen numerous issues with the Sony gaming platform, with the PlayStation Network, Sony Online Entertainment, and this is practically the same guy that led all those divisions. So, are we going to see more problems in the future?
No, that's actually a very, very good point. I do want to go to the next story, which was the big tech story. Facebook files $5 billion IPO, values the company at nearly $100 billion. These rumors have been heating up for some time, and finally it was announced that they are going public. And I believe they said Mark Zuckerberg is only going to control about 20-something% of the company. I think 28%. But he is going to be loaded from this deal. I mean, I'm sure he has a lot of money now, but this is going to really make the value of this company skyrocket. And people that are in stocks and people that actually know about these things. When a company like this goes public, the IPO will explode, and there will be a lot of money to be made the first couple days. So I know Eric is very excited for this, and he's dumping about $200,000 into stock, right, Eric?
Oh, absolutely. No, if I had a penny to invest, I wouldn't, because I think that this may, if you're a day trader, if you're good with getting in, getting out quickly, you could make a substantial profit off of this. But I don't see this as a long-term investment at all.
No, now this is the thing. Once a company goes public, Facebook could get away with a lot of stuff. One example is having your data, I guess, kind of selling out your data to companies, having partners, having part owners that really we don't know. There was a Russian company that was a part owner in it that we really didn't know what they were doing with them. Microsoft is a partner in them. Once you go public, you really have to answer to the public, and you really have to answer to the stockholders. I'm curious on how they're going to handle a lot of this privacy issues that they've been having the last couple of years. That's what I'm curious about. How are they going to do that?
Bottom line, of course, is always money.
Yeah, but you know what? Can they do? Will they get away with half the stuff that they do? It's going to be a different company. It's going to be a totally different company now that they're going public.
Yeah, well, in regards to what you're talking about, the privacy issues, the lashback that Facebook has always had when they've had privacy issues has always been from their users. I don't think that's ever going to be the case with some sort of shareholder, because they're still concerned about, is it going to make me money?
I don't know. I'm the more I use Facebook, the more I realize how people have no idea that they're putting so much information out on there. And a lot of people just feel that, well, it's my Facebook and it's go to my friends, but you don't know what they're going to do with that information. I mean, the stuff that people say,
though, is that if there's privacy issues and the users start lashing back at Facebook over it, and it makes Facebook look bad, I think that could influence shareholders in a negative way.
Yeah. But there will be a lot of money to be made. I actually know someone that's been waiting for this, and they're definitely going in. He's a big stock trader, and he's estimating about a 30 to 40% return within the first couple days.
That's just it, though. That's the thing. It says you have to have a lot of money, I think, to invest right away and get out right away, because it's going to be one of those things, and it's something that we've seen a pattern of, I think, over the past year of tech companies that have been going public. Zynga, Groupon, to name a couple of them. They started off fairly decent. They shot up pretty good. A couple of them shot up pretty good after they became public on the first day of trading. A couple of them didn't do so well even before in the futures, I think it was. And then, after about a week or two, things really died down. And it's like, because it's weird, because they'll say, all right, we're going public at $5 billion. It'll shoot up, a few $100, and it'll come back down to earth. And it might fall below what the initial offering.
Well, you look at something like Google. When Google went public, I don't think anybody estimated that company to go to where it was. I remember initially people were saying, well, it's going to go up to about $100. I think it went $80 when it went public. It's going to go to like $100, then it'll drop down. And look at Google's stock now. It's unbelievable where it's at.
Yeah, and part of this is just expectations. You have these tech companies that people find these niche companies, these tech companies, and they finally, it's like a new tech boom, and all of a sudden, all these companies are going public, and the initial excitement is there, but then everything comes back.
It settles down a little bit. Yeah,
I saw an interesting analysis by John C. Dvorak that said that either one of three things that we can say about this. Mm-hmm. Either it's going to be a one-time thing. It's not going to affect anyone else. Facebook has a big IPO. That's the end of it. No other tech company follows or dies as a result of it. Uh-huh. Number two, it's going to be the start of a new bubble. Or number three, it could signal the end of a bubble. It could signal the bubble's pinnacle right before it's about to burst. And if that's the case, you could look at the starting bubble being Google's IPO in 2004.
I think we've been in a bubble for some time, and I think the bubble's going to come down. I have a bunch of friends getting hired everywhere in the tech sector, and they're useless positions. And I've told them that. I have a couple buddies that got hired. A lot of they're redundant positions. A lot of these positions are redundant. They're hiring a lot of redundant positions. They're hiring a lot of social networking consultation positions, which I think is useless. You don't need to have a high salary person. There's a lot of overlap in these positions, and I think that a lot of people are making money Here in the New York market, there's only a handful of major tech companies, but I think a lot of them are getting. I don't want to insult anybody by saying this, but a lot of these companies really don't have too much revenue, and they're relying on venture capital's investments. They're getting, $1 million investment, $5 million investment, and they're relying on those to survive. But really, they have no revenue. So once these companies start realizing, the venture groups or the angel investors, they start realizing, well, I'm never going to get a return from this. They're not going to make money. What's going to happen to these companies? We saw this happen a couple of years ago with a lot of video services. They all disappeared because their investments weren't coming through.
And I'm seeing valuations, or I'm seeing the Facebook valuation at somewhere between $75 and $100 billion as being compared to things it should never be compared to.
What are they comparing it to?
In terms of size. Wall Street Journal compared it to, in terms of some of the highest IPOs in history, Visa, General Motors, AT&T, all companies that had actual products that had all companies that could be 100-year companies. Yeah. I don't see Facebook as one of those at all.
That's just the thing, though, with these tech companies that have been going public. Zynga, Groupon, Facebook.
Well, Groupon crashed.
They're all services on the internet.
Well, Groupon did really bad.
Physical stores or anything like that. It's all virtual.
I think Groupon did really bad with their stock, right, when they came out.
Mm-hmm.
I forgot what they debuted at, but they crashed right after, so they didn't really.
But that's what I'm saying is that there's a lot of initial excitement. There's a lot of talk about these companies that have been going public, but then a week or two after they go public in the initial offering, it's just like, who, what?
Yeah.
Oh, they're going bankrupt. Oh, they're not doing well anymore.
I do want to move on to another story because we have a lot actually today. Windows Phone 8 details are released. We're going to find out if it's going to have a dual-core processor. It's going to support dual-core processors because the version now does not. Skype integration. Now, the Skype story is very interesting. I don't know if it's going to be Skype integrated because I read on 2 separate articles that A, it is going to be Skype integrated when it comes out, and B, no, it's going to be a Skype client much like an app. But a lot of people seem to be caring about that. NFC is going to be added, NFC support. I don't know if anybody really cares about NFC at this point. I know they've made a big deal with the Google Wallet stuff, but nobody's supporting it. So really, to me, that's not a big deal. They're going to redo the OS, obviously. Zune desktop integration. Deeper SkyDrive integration, which is their cloud storage service. And a whole lot of other stuff. The reason why I wanted to talk about this is because Windows Phone 8 is going to come out around the same time that Windows 8 is going to come out. They're in a very interesting position to kind of link everything up. I don't know if I've asked you, Eric, in the past, but do you think they're going to be able to impress the masses with their next version of Windows? And what does that mean for the phone? If Windows does well, does the phone do well? If the phone does well, does Windows do well? As far as making people happy.
It's a really tough question. With either of those, I would say this is the point in history at which Microsoft makes the licensed operating system sold for a profit, meaning unlike Apple, who only runs it on their own hardware, and unlike Google, who gives it away free, or Linux, it is only, it's sold for all the PC clones out there. Anything that is considered a Windows PC can run it. Everything Windows has done. Is this a viable model going forward, or is it obsolete? And I think by making these changes, such as HTML5 and JavaScript deeply integrated, touch-based integration, platform independence, I guess you'd say, ARM versus Intel. By doing these things, making it easier to write software and write easy to write websites that feel like applications, easy to write applications that feel like websites, all this kind of thing. It's tying together many things, tying in tablets with phones with desktop PCs. So what they're going to do is they're either going to make the case for why Windows as a product is more relevant than ever and why it should demand a price instead of being given away for free, or, and this is the huge risk, they will show us why Windows is no longer needed. It's no longer relevant because we can run full application quality websites in our browsers, and we can run full desktop quality operating systems for free in Linux and Android and similar alternatives. So I think that's the big risk here. They seem confident about it, but until we see the product, I'm going to reserve my final judgment.
Well, you said something interesting there because we've seen with the iPad the success of the iPad, which is very restricted when you compare it to a desktop operating system or traditional operating system. It's very restricted, but yet millions of people use this device as their everyday computer. They really don't find a need to have a desktop or a laptop. This does it for them. So is this, unfortunately, for people like you and I and Suncast, we kind of like to have access to pretty much everything. We want to be able to control it and customize it. But are the days where we can modify the OS and we could, go into a registry and we could shut off certain features and enable certain features? Are those days ending? I think they are. I mean, with the direction that they're planning,
I certainly hope not, because if you look at, this is the thing is, take a look at Android. For comparison, there is a huge community out there of people that create custom ROMs and whatnot for Android devices. It is a huge community. If a company were to take that away, that would just be, people are going to be rebelling against that. That's just something that people are like, you can't do that. We already have this now, and people expect to be able to somehow customize this stuff. I mean, that's why there is a user base for Android.
But guess what?
Here's
the thing. Apple's a company that tells its customers what it wants and what it should want, and Apple's not afraid to shut off certain things for its user base. I mean, they really don't have the market share that Microsoft has, but look at the leap that Microsoft is taking by this operating system. It's totally different than what they've done, and they're kind of setting its way and setting its path to Windows 8 and the next one.
When it comes to the Windows Phone, I think that's perfectly fine. You also have to have some sort of alternative. You talk about the iPhone and it's being closed off, but then you do have the alternative Android where it's a lot more open, and they kind of balance each other out. So if you don't like the closed off system, you can go with Android. If you don't mind the closed off system and you like all the flashy stuff, you can go with iPhone. So there's something there for everybody, I think. But Windows Phone tries to do a balance, I think, of a little bit both of them and try to do something different than what either of them are doing. And I think a lot of the specifications that they're talking about for Windows Phone 8 sound good on paper. If they can deliver them and people accept them, it'll be a pretty big game changer for them. A lot of it, too, is just them keeping up pace with what's changing. Because if you look at the evolution of the iPhone, you saw them continually, each new version, each new generation, add new features that it kind of was missing, or the times were changing, and that's what people were going with and wanted to do on those devices.
Well, here's the interesting thing.
Phone is doing.
We're looking at two totally different operating systems at this point, right? They're really separating themselves. I think there's a lot of similarities between the current state of OS X and the current state of Windows, but I think these two companies are going to go in a totally separate path. They've kind of met in this.
Do both? I don't understand why. Do we have to have one operating system for any sort of device out there, whether it be a desktop with a 17-inch monitor or a 4-inch screen on a smartphone?
That's actually an interesting question. Why do we have to go there? Eric, why do you think we have to go there, according to these companies? They do want to unify everything.
Go where? I didn't understand
to a unified operating system amongst all.
Whether you're running that operating system on a desktop or a 4-inch screen on a smartphone.
Yeah.
Oh, just ease of use? Just what can someone pick up and know how it works?
Yeah, I guess that's why. I guess that's why, and it's kind of cheaper for the companies to develop one OS that's kind of made for everything. I just find it interesting that they're going this way. Most of the time everything has been separated for us. Phone has this operating system, and this device has this one. But in a way, it's not that bad. It might not be as awful as we think it might be.
I mean, the argument for familiarity, you can make that against almost anything. You can say that's why people go to McDonald's in a foreign town. That's why franchises like that, stores, chains. That's why the rise of the strip mall and the stores that we have instead of the mom and pops is because people like familiarity no matter where they go. Yeah. So they'd like to be able to go from the desktop to the phone to the tablet, all that stuff.
Well, do you welcome that?
And not have to learn a whole new thing.
How about yourself? Do you welcome that, or do you like the fact that you could separate everything? Or would you want everything as the same?
That's a good question. I like to experiment with things. I think Apple is... I really don't like what they did with Lion. Someone just asked me the other day, should I upgrade the line? I'm like, well, if you don't really, if you're not a hobbyist like that, I would hold off at this point.
Yeah.
Because I feel like they did a lot of stuff that tried to make it kind of like iOS, but not really. And they went in a very non-standard direction that I think if no one else goes in, if Microsoft doesn't follow suit, if Linux doesn't follow suit, they're going to just kind of be the only one with some of those weird things, like little file system kind of oddities and showing the file sizes differently, just weird behaviors like that, rules for closing and crashing applications. And I think there are true benefits to everyone not to have an operating system that does everything in a unique and idiosyncratic way, but to have some kind of consistency.
I actually just had that conversation with Paul. We were talking about Lion, and he was asking me what I think of Lion, and we were talking off the air, and I told him, I'm like, I'm really not that crazy about it, and they're doing some strange things that I don't understand why they're doing that. One example is, for whatever reason, when you go into Finder, you can't sort automatically for whatever reason under my view all my files. You can't sort by kind, by last open. It kind of does, or by name. It kind of decides on its own. Now, I don't know why it's doing that. It's kind of deciding what it's going to view
Gmail's
first.
priority inbox. It's taking over everywhere.
I guess so.
But
I want to make one more point though, if I can.
Yeah, and then we'll move on. Yeah.
Because if you look at some of the specs, they're talking about support for dual cores, NFC support. The camera app now supports lenses, which allow third parties to do stuff with it. It's got a proxy server that compresses websites. It's got native BitLocker encryption. I honestly think that if they weren't doing these things, they would fall behind.
Okay.
They have to do these things, otherwise they would fall behind, just like RIM did.
Well, it seems like the more features they're adding, the more it sounds like it's a desktop, right?
To a degree, yeah.
You know, it is interesting. I do want to.
It's trending. That's what trends are doing right now. They're saying they want NFC support.
And I would say, and just to bring it, I know you want to move on, but just to bring it around to something.
No, go ahead,
Suncast, I think started off by saying was, what becomes of those power user features? And I think what we're seeing is a streamlining, regardless of the form factor, phone, tablet, desktop, laptop, regardless of the size of the screen or whether it's touch or anything, we're seeing a streamlining of the uses that people use computers for, to the extent that 99% of customers use computers just to access email and Facebook. That's what it'll be streamlined to do. Yeah. And that's why the way that we think of a personal computer has changed. Just like how when you bought a PC 30 years ago, it was expected that you were going to write program and write code on it. That's certainly not the case anymore. And I think more and more, it's going to be not expected that you would even ever look at the registry or ever look in the, as Apple recently hid, the library folder. There's more and more of that closing off as the bulk of people start using these things for everyday activities. The need for power users and people who want to get in there and tinker becomes a smaller and smaller proportion of the user base.
Yeah. I do want to move on, but before we do, I want to talk about our sponsor, Hover.com. Domain names made simple. Hover is back on the GFQ network, and they are advertising with us once again. Hover is a very simple to use, easy to use, no hassle, no upsell domain registrar. Obviously, I'm a big fan of Hover. They advertise with us, and I use them personally. I have over 250 domains, Suncast. Is that right?
Too many. 250
around there. And I've transferred every one of them to Hover.com because of the way they conduct their business. If you go to gfq.hover.com, you can get 10% off your entire purchase. And I do want to say this about Hover. I recently, I was locked for whatever reason. I had a domain with another company and I couldn't transfer it. It just wasn't happening. And I called Hover and I told them about this and they go, no problem. They did it on their own. They did the transfer for me. They dealt with the problem with the other domain company, and they did everything for me. No, they didn't charge me anything for that. They just took care of it because that's the company they are. No hold time when you call during the week. Phenomenal service, phenomenal guys. If you go to gfq.hover.com or use promo code GFQ, get 10% off your entire purchase. That's hover.com. I do want to go to the AMD story, guys, because this is... I personally was a big fan of AMD for many, many years, and I stuck with AMD a little too long. My last Intel computer was a Pentium 2. And when they went to Pentium 3, I didn't like what they were doing, and I went to AMD, and I absolutely loved AMD until Sandy Bridge came out. That's when I went over. When those i7s started coming out, that's when I finally had to abandon ship because AMD really fell behind. And for many years, AMD was really driving Intel to its innovation. I mean, they really... How many years would you guys say that AMD had control? I would say maybe 3-4 years. They were really going neck and neck.
Yeah, kind of around like 2003 or so.
Yeah, they were really going neck and neck, and they just fell apart. They just were not able
around the
to.
time that they were doing all the XP Athlon type of stuff.
Yeah, they were really. I mean, they were much cheaper and they were faster in some situations. They were doing really well, and Intel really got innovative with their technology, and they changed their entire way that they look at this stuff.
Yeah, the core series totally changed their whole pipeline.
Yeah, I mean, with the hyper threading and everything, it just totally changed everything, and they're so much faster. I'll tell you, we're using
Let me ask you.
Yeah, go ahead.
Do you think that part of their success, and maybe perhaps most of their success during that time, was because of custom PC builders? Because I think that might have had a big hand in their success. Is the boom of custom PC builders and sites like Newegg.com, giving people access and to these products that they can build on their own.
Yeah, no. I absolutely attribute it to that, but there was a big boom in the early 2000s. People were really... It got very easy to build your own PC, to be honest. It became really easy, and everybody was able to do it, and it was very cheap and very very fast to do, and you could overclock it. But AMD fell behind. Now they're looking to really get aggressive in the tablet world. AMD has been really working on mobile, but nobody's really picked them up. One rumor was a couple of months ago that the next generation iPad would have gone with AMD. I can't ever see Apple going with AMD at all. But you know, we saw that they're developing their own with ARM. It's an ARM chipset. They're doing their own thing now. But AMD's in second place. Obviously, there's nobody else in third to compete with. But can AMD capture a certain market or demographic with aiming towards cloud computing, mobile computing? I don't know if they can. I don't know if they'll ever be able to grab a market, or they'll be this second place company that's much cheaper than what you could buy with Intel. I'll go to Eric first. Eric, what do you think of that? What do you think AMD could do? Do you think this plan works for them?
Well, for cloud computing and tablets, I don't know. Is that really a market that would separate them from ARM or even Intel? What happened? I was just thinking last CES, they had all these pamphlets. There was this huge thing. They had booths everywhere about their Fusion core. That it was going to be, what did they? It wasn't even a CPU. They call it like a
APU.
APU, exactly. What became of that?
Nothing happened. You know what they did? I think they used them in some netbooks. Some inexpensive netbooks had them in, so it's video and audio, video and processing. But Intel's been doing that. Intel does that with their i7s.
Right, and Intel's been very good and apparently on track to deliver a x86-based Atom chip that has the power efficiency of an ARM chip. And meanwhile, ARM is just tearing things up with power efficiency, and they're the darling child of the mobile world. So I don't know what AMD is going to be able to do, especially if that Fusion chip didn't pan out.
Suncast, what do you think? I mean, I know you've had you're an Intel guy, right?
Yeah, I'm definitely, and let me explain why I'm an Intel guy.
By the way, if I'm a little distracted, we had a situation here in the studio that I had to fix. Something bad happened in here.
Oh no.
Yeah.
So this is why I'm an Intel guy. Is I've used the AMD in the past. I've had several AMD based systems. I've worked on several AMD based computers, and I'm not making this up. Every single one that I've experienced, I've had a bad experience with. I just have not liked their performance in the way they've worked compared to every other machine that I had that was based on Intel. I've had such a much better experience with Intel than I have with AMD, which is why I honestly don't see AMD going anywhere when Intel offers such a superior service and products. Yeah, they're a little bit cheaper, but that's fine for the people that want cheaper products. But if you actually need the performance and the experience, I think Intel is definitely the way to go. What I'm curious about is, I understand their strategy here. I really do. It's just whether or not that's going to pan out, and I think it's a big risk for them. They've taken some risk before, but this is an even bigger risk whether or not this is going to work. They're kind of like searching right now. All right, what can we do to make us competitive again and make us number one? And they just have not found what it is that's going to raise their bar and make them appealing to everybody again.
But AMD AMD has an 8-core processor, okay? Their FX series. They have
It
an
doesn't matter
8-core
what they
processor.
have. Intel is just better.
No, I'll tell you, the 8-core processor, it cannot compete with Intel's quad-core processor. That's
my
the
exact
problem.
point.
That's the problem. And these things are really hot. I mean, AMD's overheat a lot. You know, they run really hot. I don't know if they're going to be able to compete with them on the...
I had an AMD that overheated.
You did?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I've had many AMDs that overheated, but when you're looking at what they're doing now, I don't know. I don't know what it is. Go ahead.
Yeah, it seems like they're trying to occupy a strange middle ground where they're neither the most power efficient nor the most the fastest.
Yeah.
They're not the fastest. That's Intel, and they're not the most power efficient. That's ARM.
So
and
what are
probably
they?
ARM's a little bit cheaper for that power efficiency. So they're in this weird middle ground of, I guess they're going to compete on price. What?
I mean, this is a really 125 watts, 3.9 gigahertz processor, and then it goes into turbo mode for 4.5. And this thing is not as fast as the quad core that Intel's been putting out. I mean, and it's not that cheap.
The most interesting point I find in all of this, though, is that they don't put off the table switching to ARM for some of this stuff that they're thinking about doing.
Is that what they said?
That's really interesting that they're actually thinking about going with ARM over their own stuff.
Yeah, because ARM's been able to do it, and they do it really cheap.
Yeah.
You know, that's the thing.
That, to me, tells me that they're not confident in the products that they do.
I don't know. I feel that they kind of shifted their initiative when they got ATI. You know, they bought ATI out, and now it's all AMD. ATI is AMD, but I don't know if that was we have to look at what we're going to do in the long run because we're not able to innovate as fast, or it was maybe we need to kind of combine, because when they put that Fusion, that APU thing up, they did. When they put that APU stuff out, people really thought, well, this will be great for these mobile devices and these lightweight laptops and netbooks.
Right.
You put it in one device and it's able to perform, but obviously the performance is really not there. Psychcast, do you want to pick a story?
Yeah, I can pick one. What's really interesting is the story about Google having to pay $660,000 for offering Google Maps for free in France. I don't know if you saw this story, but Periscope earlier this week ordered Google France and Google to pay up to a company called, I believe, Botten Cartographs, which is a map maker that offers services to businesses. And they alleged that because Google offers their maps for free, that they couldn't compete with them because they had to charge for their maps.
And they won.
So yeah, the court said that, oh yeah, because you're offering it for free, these other companies that charge for their services can't compete with that. So it's anti-competitive.
Europe is really weird with their antitrust and anti-competition laws. They're really weird with that stuff, and you'll see this happen over and over again. One interesting Google story that I saw was the Bouncer service that's going to scan the Android marketplace.
Yeah.
And this is the thing, Android's marketplace is very open, and a lot of applications are crappy, and a lot of applications are not legitimate, and they're spyware. And people are really upset at the service, and they're saying, well, if they're going to start searching for that, what's going to happen to the marketplace? Are they going to get closed? Are they going to not allow, applications that they don't approve of? And I welcome this. I don't see what the problem is.
Anything, honestly.
I mean,
I think it might find some, but the problem is, you have to know what you're looking for. You're going to have a virus scanner. All these antivirus applications out there. It's the same premise. If you don't have an idea of what to look for, you can't flag it.
Yeah, I mean, Eric, what do you think of this? Android is really, really plagued. Their marketplace is absolutely awful, and I say this all the time, and I have an Android phone. They're getting better, but they're still really bad. They have to get a little closed, right, if they want to kind of clean up.
Well, it seems like what this Bouncer application is doing is just scanning submitted applications against known malware. It's looking for permissions and seeing is it doing something a little bit unnecessarily permissionful. And my question is, why haven't they been doing this since day one? They're basically running, McAfee antivirus on the potential software submitted for inclusion in the store. Sure, if they don't want to have someone approve every piece of software like Apple does or like RIM does or Microsoft or others, fine. But why not even just scan them with the antivirus That's kind of what even Gmail does, right?
Yeah,
They've
yeah,
had
yeah.
antivirus scanning. So it seems like, why would they have waited this long to implement the most basic fundamental of app scanning?
Well, this is Google's way of conducting business, right? And we've said this over and over again. It's that beta mentality when it comes to launching products. But once you're launching a product that the consumer's paying for, you can't really have that mentality with it. I always said Android was a beta product up until now. I think this is the first release of Android, Ice Cream Sandwich, that's kind of like a final version. Everything prior to this, to me, is a big fat beta that's incomplete, and the UI is not streamlined, and certain parts of the UI look a certain way, and in other parts look extremely incomplete. This is the first version, and I don't know if what they could do with this marketplace. The problem with the marketplace is it's way too open, and you have redundancy, and you have just awful applications that won't work on certain phones. And again, that's not their fault. That's the developers that aren't supporting every phone. I recently downloaded an app. I forgot what it was. It wasn't like an unknown app either, and you know what it was? It was actually an unknown app. Actually, I should take that back. It was a switcher for VidBlaster. I downloaded. It would not work on my phone. It wouldn't work on the Nexus. It would just crash every time. It would say unexpected error. It would crash. But that happens over and over again in the marketplace. They're gonna have to take a lot of these applications out. If it's not supporting the number one phone on your platform, they need to take it out of the marketplace, or tell them you have a couple days to resubmit it and clean up your act.
So what you're saying is that you want to have every developer support every Android device out there.
They can't. Well, no, not every Android device, but the top phones you have to support. You have to. How can you not? What does that say for your product?
Are you going to give them like a grace period when a new device comes out? I mean,
well, yeah, I think you're going to have to. I think you're going to have to. I mean, not every application crashes. That's obvious, but some of the applications are not set up for certain phones and certain resolutions, and they're going to have to make it compatible.
Right. Some of.
Can you imagine if that happened in the iPhone store? Can you imagine if the iPhone 4?
Well, it's a totally different experience, because the iPhone is a closed system where they developed the hardware specifically.
Yeah, but here's the thing.
And whereas Android, you have multiple manufacturers creating hardware for Android.
But that also attributes to the success.
Experience for developers.
No. It also attributes. It is a different experience, but it attributes to the success of the platform. That's what it comes down to. In order for Google and the marketplace to be successful for the long run, it needs to be able to be backwards compatible with the number one phone, at least.
Not every manufacturer makes that easy to do with their hardware, and that's what it comes down to. Is that some of the hardware developers, the manufacturers don't give developers the tools they need in order to access or do what they need to do. They can't provide that quality of application that they want to do because of the hardware. You might have a piece of hardware that doesn't run a specific requirement, or doesn't meet a specific requirement, but another piece of hardware does.
But I understand your point. I think it would be. You're right, though. It
might be the same Android version, but because the hardware doesn't meet a certain requirement, the developers can't make that application work for it, because their application that they built runs on and needs to meet a certain criteria, just like Windows operating systems having to meet certain hardware requirements.
No, but what about your Google phone, right? Your Google Experience phone. Shouldn't that be compatible?
I think there are certain phones that you have to have applications that are out there for it, but it's just you have to incentivize it too, and you have to make it worthwhile for developers to go out there and do this for all these different devices, because you don't have just one manufacturer. If it's just one manufacturer, like it is with Apple, it becomes so much easier to support generations. You can do generations to a degree, but it's just like with RIM. When they have new generations come out, you can't have an application that supports all the way back to 4.0 operating system, even though that current is 7.1. You just can't create an application that's for OS 5 and up be supported by something that's OS 4.5 and down.
Eric, what do you think they need to do with this? Because this is interesting. This is the discussion that everybody has about Google Android. Well, what do you do with this stuff? Like, these are serious issues that they have. That's
don't know.
see, that's
But
that's
just-
exactly what I said.
Yeah, it's fragmentation. Yeah, it's the same things that we've been kind of running in circles around for years. It's something I was kind of going to bring up in the predatory pricing thing about the maps is what do you do when a company like Google comes in and turns operating systems into a free commodity that they fully fund themselves and don't even accept outside development in a true open source environment. And what that means for the future. So I don't know. Even as you say that you see everything as a perpetual beta, it's kind of like, what does that mean? What does beta then mean if they can get that much market share with a so-called beta product?
Yeah.
So is it a beta or is Google merely redefining what we expect from software and software releases? I don't know.
Yeah, it's a different way. I mean, you're right about that. You have companies that rely on these paid services. Google comes into town and offers it for free. Then what do? How do you keep that customer base? Is it Google's
Come
fault?
back with a better product.
Come back with a better product, but
Offer the customer something that they find useful and would be willing to consider to pay for. That's the thing is, in regards to the Google stuff, Google Maps is pretty great. I think there's definitely room there that, you could offer your customers something unique that Google Maps doesn't. That's what you have to do. You have to find what is it that your customers want that Google Maps does not offer.
yeah, I don't even know what they could. I honestly do. It's a very tough thing. It's if you have
I'll
a
give you an
shop.
example. It's like us and Skype. We have a love-hate relationship with Skype. We love that it's free. We love that it works reliably for the most part. But if there was a service out there that charged money and it worked in the way that we needed it to work, we would gladly give them money for their service and get rid of Skype.
Yeah, no, you're right about that.
I would even say that, my fundamental opinion of all this stuff is, I believe in the principles of the early days of the web that rocketed us through the last 20 years or so of the web. That's a little bit more than it has been. But the point is, the browser is the platform. The network is the platform.
Mm-hmm.
I think that ultimately apps will always just be fully cross-platform. They're going to be web-based. Even if you're a developer and you don't think HTML5 and you don't think JavaScript is there yet, eventually the next replacements of the HTML6 will be. If that's how you have to look at it. I think that the natural order of things, of customers, of software developers, of basically everyone except the makers of proprietary operating systems, is to make these things fully cross-platform. And I think any action by any maker of any OS that is counter to that, whether even including Apple, the appification of the web, I think is merely setting up roadblocks, delaying that inevitability.
Yeah,
I think it's fine if you make that a requirement for like big name companies. It's hard to do it when you're a one-person developer company. It's a big burden for you to make everything cross-platform compatible when you're just one guy.
I think it's becoming much easier to be cross-platform compatible. I think it's a different time now. I think for many developers, they've kind of gotten the hang of it. They kind of understand how it works, and I think it's just going to get easier as we use these services more and more.
Well, what I mean specifically is the .com nature, the browser-like nature. If you can walk up to almost any web browser on almost any platform and you can go up to IE6 on an XP machine or some funky Linux browser from 10 years ago, type in any URL and get roughly maybe 80 to 70% of the same functionality you would on Google Chrome running on a Core i7.
That I would agree with, definitely.
Yeah. So yes, we're in a weird position now where developers are having to write iPad editions, Android editions for multiple Android screen resolutions. And I think clearly the future of all this is how the web browser, it's the change that the web browser did, the change that TCP/IP did, the change that email did, which is to have a baseline communication standard amongst all these things, the ultimate, write once, run anywhere.
We have to, I guess, do we have room for one more story, guys, you think? Or do we do the picks? Not? Yeah, let's do one more story. I guess I'll go to the Microsoft debuts Kinect for Windows. To me, this is just bizarre, and I'll tell you why. I understand where Kinect is going for Windows. I understand how it could be extremely beneficial for certain things. But in its current state right now, this is still a trial period. This is just... It's a giant thing. You're going to pop it on a computer, and you're going to move your arms around. This will be interesting when it's in the laptop, and it's just, your camera and your laptop is your Kinect. But what are you going to do with it? I understand this Minority Report type motion stuff, but that's still long. We still have a long way to go. What are they going to do with this? How is this going to sell? Do you think this will sell? I don't think this is really going to sell, in my personal opinion. I guess that's the only really discussion that we can have is if it's going to sell. We understand what it does. It does a pretty okay job at it, but it's not this amazing product, and a lot of people are not blown away by it. Is this something you would get, Eric? I mean,
No, and I think I suspect Microsoft does not expect a lot of consumers will be buying this Kinect for Windows 1.0. I think maybe future versions. I think maybe higher resolution versions that allow for gaming of different types. I've started to see Microsoft has a prototype of Kinect in a laptop, which seems utterly ridiculous because Kinect was not designed to be to use on a device that you can reach out and touch, inches away from you, and then this thing can only see your head, so it's not even recognizing the skeletal joints and everything that makes Kinect so unique, and doing the depth perception and all that stuff. I think this is mainly a response to the enterprising developers. We've seen some really ingenious uses for the Kinect, some hacking of the Kinect, making the Xbox version work with Windows, writing open source hacked drivers. A lot of innovation. Robots are being steered or self-steering themselves by the Kinect. Little AI bots running around the room in labs. So that's great. I'm glad that they're making this available in a legal way that the license allows, and in an affordable way. People don't have to hack and modify and everything. So it'll be really cool to see what innovation comes out of this. But I don't see this being a consumer product to play consumer games or to control a consumer operating system, for instance, for years from now.
Yeah, and that's pretty much my point with this. It's I guess it's intended to see where it goes and to create a better device for the long run, rather than and for the demand, because many people were asking for this as developers, and really, like you said, a lot of cool hacks were put out. But where does this go? Again, the one in the laptop, that's interesting to me, because you're right. The face recognition really it's not going to work the same way because it's so close to you. And what are you going to do with it? I mean, I could just imagine in Word, you're going to scroll up and down like this. That to me, that's what I could see this being for the main purpose. But is it another gimmick, or can we see something very important and revolutionary coming out from this?
And there is something gimmicky about that. I think what the great experiment of the Nintendo Wii has shown, it rocketed to popularity, partially because of its gimmick of the motion control, and the other half of that was because it competed in price in 2006, 7, 8, around there. It was about half the price of the PlayStation 3s and Xboxes. So that's why it was so big. As soon as everyone had an HD TV and could appreciate HD and started to be able to watch that stuff and got into, gaming on the Xbox and everything like that, then suddenly PS3 and Xbox overtook the Wii by a lot. And so people are looking at the Zelda game came out. I was waiting for that Zelda game for years. I ended up not buying it because I thought to myself, I don't want to sit there for 70 hours or whatever it claims, watching in standard def doing this thing. I think recent history has now shown us by the Wii experiment that given the choice of gamers between something in your hand where you just press a button and it does the thing that you're used to, or going like this the whole time, moving around, dancing around, just to do something like to swing your Link's sword and shield that he's had since 1987, people will choose the button press. And that's why it's even more absurd to have that as a way to scroll through applications on a laptop choice. Inches away from your face.
Well, this is interesting because this is the same argument we've had for the tablets, right? I mean, the Wii came out. It was an inexpensive unit. It wasn't as good as far as graphics go compared to the Xbox and the PlayStation. We understood that, but people bought it because it had this different type of playing games. I mean, it was a totally different experience than what everybody else was doing. But we understood that, listen, the games are not going to be as good, but look at what we're getting. The tablet market is kind of going to become the same thing, where it's going to be, well, we understand that the iPad is $500, and it's the best one as far as, speed goes and service and the actual environment that you're in. But there are $100 units that have blah, blah, blah that this doesn't. It's not as good, but it has this one thing that might appeal to many people. That seems like, to me, is what's going to happen in the tablet market.
You know what you can compare this to is Siri on the Apple iPhone. That's what it sounds like to me. It's one of those things. It's a niche. It's a gimmick. It's a novelty of sort that it's neat, but in the overall scheme of things, it's not that important. Not everybody needs Siri to be able to talk to and run their smartphone.
Yeah, I wonder
you
if
don't
this
need it. It's an added bonus.
I wonder if this is a response to Siri in some way. They saw the success, at least the mainstream
it's a
success of what it was.
But it's such a drastic difference in terms of what you're doing. You're talking about, a PC or a laptop versus a smartphone that you're always taking with you.
I'll tell you, this is a perfect example. Siri's a perfect example, and then we'll go into our picks. Siri's a perfect example of Apple's unbelievable PR, because voice recognition software has been integrated in Android and in Windows Phone for a while, but Apple just did it so much better. And they were able to sell this to people, and they were able to make this a main selling point. I don't know one person with the phone that really uses Siri. I mean, the novelty's over, asking
But isn't
to
that
find.
the point when you're talking about Connect for the PC? How often are you really going to use this thing?
Yeah, I think it's a novelty act.
You can
I
still use
think
your
it's
computer, but why would you use this thing that you move up and down and whatever to control your PC?
in a way. I think Microsoft does see it as a gimmick, and I think, but Microsoft does see it as the future of possibly something. We're always looking for that next mouse, right?
That's got to be their new slogan. Microsoft, the future of possibly something.
Yeah, I mean that's really what it is. We don't know what's going to happen. I mean, we've been trying to find the next mouse since the mouse came out. Maybe this is the next mouse. We don't know.
It could be. I mean, it could be, we could be as wrong about this as people were who said that the Magnavox Odyssey was a silly little thing. That was the thing where you put the overlay on the TV and you move the dot around a maze. People could have said, well, who's going to play games like that in their home? Well, no one did. But it was the first step, the baby step for a much larger industry of fun and amusement for television's gaming.
Oh, yeah.
So I don't know. It could be what's behind door number 3.
This could sound a little bit gimmicky, but this is something, a real world application that I could kind of see for a Connect for the PC is for those that are paralyzed from the neck down. All they have use of is their head. Maybe they can create some sort of software that interprets facial expressions and whatnot for these people that are paralyzed from the neck down.
Well,
to
see,
be able to control their
that's
PC.
exactly one article that I read. They said it's going to really innovate the way for people that are not able to, they've lost motion and functionality of their arms. This might change the way that they're able to do it. Right now, there are softwares like that, but it's not that great. But if Microsoft does put effort and energy behind it, it could possibly be something very interesting, and it might work really well.
Yeah, and I think that could be the biggest innovation is what interfaces can you change to be completely hands-free, not even buttons or a keyboard or a mouse, and not even waving your hands in the air, but just like you said, for paralyzed individuals as well as just average people to be able to look at the screen and have the computer interpret through, as our science of brain intentions gets better, to be able to interpret and say, just imagine clicking the back button and the browser goes back, or just think of the page that you were on earlier and it would show up, or just think of the file you want and it would open, that kind of thing.
You know what you're talking about here, though, is right. It's telepathy.
Yes, that's where we need to go. We need to go to telepathy. Why don't we go into our picks of the week? How about that? Suncast, do you want to go first?
Yeah, I can go first. Let me know when you get the thing up.
There you go. There you go.
All right, so my pick this week is a application. I'm going to say the name of the company once because it's kind of hard to pronounce. Athtech Skype Recorder. Athtech is kind of a hard name to say.
Athtec.
Yeah, Athtech. Athtech. It's a little bit difficult to pronounce, but their Skype Recorder application is very, very cool and slick. It's probably one of the best that I've seen out there as far as Skype recorders go. And I know a lot of people do a lot of calls on Skype. We do Skype all the time. And sometimes you just need something that integrates with Skype that can record your phone calls. This Skype Recorder from Tech is very, very, very slick. It can automatically record your phone calls for you. It has a ton of features. It's not free, but they offer both a Pro and a Lite version. The Lite version is $10. The Pro version is, I believe, $30. But you can try them both for free, which is really cool. It doesn't really have any kind of day restriction like other applications have, but you have really cool features. You can set it up to automatically record your calls. You can record your own voice. You can record the other conversation from your partner. You can separate them, which is really interesting, is that you can actually record yourself and your other person on separate channels.
That's very interesting.
If you wanted to edit them, it makes it even easier to edit that phone call so they're not both mixed together.
I know a lot of podcasters could really benefit from this and use this.
There's a lot of equipment. I believe the Shortcut and some other devices that I think Spencer knows of does similar stuff to that. It's really cool that it has that ability to record your own voice and your partner's voice in separate tracks. And this is all configurable, which is really cool that you can decide what you want to do with it, which is what makes this such a slick product. It's very cool. You have lots of options. You can it records automatically to a WAV file, but you can also compress it. If not, you can just leave it as a WAV file. You can also automatically clear your temp files every time you record a phone call. It's pretty cool. I haven't seen another application really that does Skype recording as well as Skype Recorder does from Tech. Let me see what their website is real quick for you. It's skype-record.com.
Really cool. Eric, do you want to go next or you want me to go next?
Sure, I've got a good one.
Go ahead.
To make up for the last time when I had zero.
Yeah, nothing.
This is actually a good one. This is a pair of headphones. This is a product type that I've been looking for years. I'd kind of check in with Amazon, just kind of do a search and see, well, I guess still no one's made anything kind of like this. Finally, someone has. This is from Polk Audio. This is the Polk Ultra Fit 2000 sports headphones. These are over-the-ear headphones, as you can see. They've got that behind-the-head look where they go over your ears, but they're not in-ear for people like me who don't like the in-ear thing.
I absolutely hate them,
never
Eric.
comfortable. So what makes these unique, though, aside from pretty good audio quality for the form factor, being an athletic headphone, is it has an iPhone-compatible microphone right there. And it's got that little 3-ring connector that can be used on an iPhone and on other handsets of other types that use that. And I assume that it also means it can work with the newest MacBooks that allow you to plug in, for instance, the iPhone headset that comes with it, the little white earbuds, and use it with Skype or iChat or FaceTime or any of that kind of thing. So that kind of helps make up for the price because it's $79, which is not cheap for a sports headphone. But if you're like me and you like to be able to have something over your ear instead of inside your eardrum, and you like to be able to have a wired hands-free device for the phone instead of having a Bluetooth thing that you have to charge and pair and so forth and hook on your ear. And, of course, because it's 2 stereo headphones, you hear the person's voice that you're talking to hands-free in both ears, which I also really like. So that's that, and that's the Polk Ultra Fit 2000 sports headphone.
How's the quality?
Audio.
How's the speaker quality?
The pair that this is replacing for me was a $50 pair that I had years ago from Sony that were the little over-the-ear clip-ons, no microphone.
Mm-hmm.
For that price, they sounded terrible, and these sound for $80. They sound much better. I've had much better headphones and heard much better headphones for $80, so don't buy them for the sound quality. You'll still get much better out of like a Grado, for instance. But for a microphone, for it being primarily a hands-free device for an iPhone, and for primarily being a sports headphone that you can get sweaty and everything when you go running and stuff, for that, it's a very good deal and surprisingly good sound quality. Good bass too.
Really cool. Really cool. My pick this week is an iPhone app, actually, and everybody's going to laugh what iPhone app it is. It's the Paul Thurrott app on the iPhone for iOS. So Paul's website.
Track.
Yeah. Somebody cue a laugh track because that's funny. The Windows guy has an iPhone app. I was playing around with it, and the reason why I'm picking it is because I'm extremely selfish, and our show is on there. If you go into the iOS App Store and you put in Paul Thurrott or Pocket Tech, it says Pocket Tech Paul Thurrott is the name of the application, and you could get a number of things such as his articles, podcasts. You could get Windows Weekly, you could get our show, What the Tech, on there in audio and video form, and anything else he's doing, and his Twitter. It's a free app. Paul, I believe it came out last week. I'll give you an example. And it's pretty cool, actually. I like the interface, and I'm really thinking about ripping them off in a way and making my own app with this. But you get video, audio. You can subscribe. Really, really cool stuff. It's the Paul Thurrott app. I guess that's what I could call it, right? That sounds weird, right? The Paul Thurrott app. It says Pocket Tech, Paul Thurrott. So just put in Paul Thurrott. You'll find him. That's my pick. Before we wrap up, though, I have a rant. I have to go on a little rant. Just a minute. I know Eric loves going on rants.
Now for another hour of ranting with Andrew Zarian.
And someone needs to explain to me how this makes sense. I had a discussion with Verizon today. We had some internet issues yesterday. So I called up Verizon, and they fixed that problem. And then I decided that I'm going to upgrade my second Fios line. We have 2 Fios lines coming in. We have a 45 by 45 Fios, 45 megabit by 45 megabit. And we also have a 15 by 5. I decided that it is time for me to upgrade my 15 by 5 to 25 by 25. I believe it was $74, right? Let's say it's $74 for the package. That's what they told me. They said 1 year contract, $74. She's processing it through, and she goes, guess it's not $74, it's $90. I said, why would it be $90? I'm paying for the triple play one, which is 45 by 45. I'm paying like $50. So it's almost twice the amount of the faster speed. They go, because we're not offering a contract in your neighborhood. They're offering a contract to every possible town around me except for my town. And I had this discussion with her, and I said, well, this is how it works. The reason why you guys do that is because you're offering a contract, and it's an incentive for someone to sign up on a contract, and it's almost like a punishment to not to get a contract because now you're not locked in. When you're not offering a contract, you can't do that. You can't turn around and say, guess what, this is our price, but we're not going to give that to you because we decided that we don't want people in your area to get that. We're going to charge you twice as much. So I went on this crazy rant with this woman for 45 minutes. They couldn't transfer me.
45 minutes?
It was 45 minutes, the conversation with her.
Wow.
45 minutes. And I keep asking her to explain why they're doing this. She didn't understand. And she goes, well, if you get a triple play deal, you could get it. I'm like, but I already have a triple play with my other line. So honor the fact that I have it. I went on the big rant. It got nowhere. Supervisor did nothing for me. I went on Twitter and I tweeted the problem. And now Verizon is looking to make me happy. And they're probably going to honor the contract. But explain to me how this makes sense to anybody in this planet. That you have a service at a certain price with a contract. I understand that. And then you have the price without the contract, which I understand that, how that works. But if you're not offering the contract, you decide to take away a contract, you can't turn around to somebody and say, well, this is the price you have to suffer because we decided we're not going to give you a contract. But guess what? If you're a new customer, you have to sign a contract so you automatically get the good deal. So once again, big company screwing over its customers.
Andrew, did you happen to see if your area, your neighborhood, which you said is the only one that they didn't offer the special in, is it perhaps an area of lower competition? You don't have alternate ISPs that they are competing with in those other areas?
No, they compete with Time Warner. They compete with DSL. So
interesting.
It's a major. Yeah, it's actually one of the first places in New York City to get Fios. We were the first, I believe, the first or second town to get Fios in New York City. So it's just a bizarre thing, and I don't understand it. But the strangeness to me was the fact that they're still offering a contract to new customers. So a contract does exist. They're just not renewing contracts for existing customers. And I said, okay, so why don't we do this? Why don't you cancel my service? Because I already have it. Why don't we cancel my service and give me a new service? They go, no, we can't do that because if we cancel the service, there's a 30-day wait period. I go, okay, so you're going to, and I told him, I'm like, this makes a lot of sense. You're not going to make as much money now from me than you would if you would have made, rather than $38, because I'm locked into a price. I'm locked in at like $29. So rather than $29 making $74, you're going to make $29 because you don't want to give me a contract. She didn't understand. Like it went way over her head. So I went to Twitter and I complained on Twitter, and now they're trying to make me happy.
What do you expect from the people at the phone company?
I find that funny though. I find the guys on Twitter are able to do it. And I told him, I'm like, you know what?
You'll end up getting somebody at Twitter watching their Twitter feed that has more power invested in them than they do when you call them up in
Yeah.
person.
Isn't that funny, Eric? Isn't that funny how that works?
That is interesting. That's a neat little, democratizing feature of Twitter, that it's a way to have your voice heard in a public forum, public enough that they would feel a PR need to monitor and make good on the things people are saying about them on Twitter.
You know, I had this problem with them once before with Verizon Wireless. I tweeted the fact that I was having a problem with my service. The following day, I had a representative come to my house to try to fix the problem that we were having, to see if they're experiencing the same problem. So I recommend anybody. That should be my pick of the week. Go to Twitter and complain about the products that you're using, because you'll get an answer. If you want more information on Eric, go to ericlanigan.com. He does a number of podcasts every week. You're everywhere, Eric.
Everywhere on the planet.
You're
Yes,
everywhere on the planet.
ericlanigan.com and Twitter /Eric Lanigan. ERIKLANIGAN.
Yes, ERIK, not C. Suncast. For more Suncast information, go to Amadeus.com. Suncast, how do you spell it?
AMADAIS.com.
You don't even know.
No.
You don't even know. And explain it a little bit to people. What is Amadeus.com?
It's a music blog site where I pick YouTube videos, people that like to sing stuff, they cover songs. They're not professional artists by any means, what you would consider like mainstream, like Usher or Jennifer Lopez. They're not in that same category of mainstream, but they are artists that are very good. I just posted one yesterday, I believe it was. It's a very cool article and video from somebody that covers a Taylor Swift song. It's really, really, really well done.
Excellent. For Guys from Queens stuff, go to gfqnetwork.com. Also watch us live at gfqlive.tv. Stay tuned. Behind the Counter is up next. Good night, everybody.